to you today as an affected citizen. I live in Thornton Park, and it's a very colorful neighborhood. And in a way, I am displaced from, let's say, Kits at 44 years old and a first-time homebuyer. I closed on an apartment with north and west views, and oh, that's not working. Oh, but that works. Okay, on the 200 block of Prior, 4 days before the 2012 viaduct proposal came out, two of the key reasons I bought this specific apartment is that it is quite private, as you cannot see here. Which one? I have to click this one. Oh boy. And it has great sunlight in the evening when I get home from work, and this is still not working. Sorry. I click on the right mouse. Can I get a little more time? Let's see here. Okay, that's, no. Okay, there we go. I'm trying to go to my PC. Okay. I wanted to talk to you about Thornton Park, where I live. On the right-hand side here, you have the land packages. This slide takes those packages and categorizes them. In A, you have a CD1 development that has a 250-foot height, condo and townhomes, already spoken for. The FC1 zoning has my strata, which is E on top, 5 SRO buildings marked B, 3 city-owned, one of which is a public housing building marked C, and 4 packages with improvement values of under $20,000 marked D. Areas B, C, and D on this map, which is pretty much all there is, are candidates for social housing. Related to the micro-dwelling concept, which is proposed for my zoning area, I support the idea of social housing. And in fact, if every single unit in my zoning were social housing from now on, I'd be great with that. However, when it comes to micro-dwellings, I wonder where it fits into the portfolio of low-income housing. It is 2.5 times larger than the required SRO space, 20 to 35% smaller than the smallest condo allowed, and allowed only in certain Vancouver neighborhoods. If these units aren't social housing, then you would not be restricting their development to the zonings that already house a lot of SROs. As such, the rental-only requirement is critical. Still, from a rental support standpoint, it doesn't seem to add up. For these micro-units that will be market rental, you say that the rents cannot be greater than a typical condo according to CMHC stats. I would like to get someone to look at that closer. This is a sticky issue because you are adding units that you are designing on a social policy basis but allowing market. As you can see here, despite the $450 for an SRO room that you quote in your report, the SRO next door to me had one on the market this week for $625. The CMHC market rents are a number that doesn't foot with what you see on Craigslist. It only adds up on a square foot basis. The implication here is that landlords can charge exactly $1 less a month than they legally are permitted to. Will anyone actually want to build a 250 square foot room requiring ceilings higher than anything going into the area today on a condo basis with balconies for all when they could build 125 square feet without those bells and whistles and get 80% of the rent? Finally, I would put a lot more in the zoning bylaw and less in the guidelines. My zoning's guidelines were important to me when I bought my unit, and as you will see in my final point, they are totally ignored today. This leaves the zoning open to much more interpretation, and I think it is unfair to protecting the interests of the persons with hearts currently living here versus the persons within corporations and lawyers wanting to profit from developing here. For example, any place you use a must in the guideline, if you are serious about it, I wonder why it is not in the bylaws. Bike room bylaws are quite prescriptive. Moving on, the city is proposing that height limits can be lifted in my zoning if developers sign on to this new housing model. In your report, you claim that the height limit today north of National and FC1 is 275 feet. I think Councillor Affleck referred to exactly this table earlier today with speaker 3 or 4. While the zoning could be read that way, the guidelines for this zone very clearly show, sorry, I have to go back one slide, that the 275 feet heights were intended for the south end of the zoning, not the north. In fact, all of Thornton Park is shown with a 75-foot height limit. I used this information when buying my apartment. So I would like to say that raising height limits in the zoning will create issues for my unit. As you can see, while I can see the sun for 8 months a year after work, if you wall me in, that will take me down to around 6 weeks, which is not anything I ever would have bought into. This would put the interest of the new developer and future residents in conflict with my interest as a current resident who bought under current zoning. My zoning speaks to the livability of my unit relating to sunlight in my living room and limiting the number of towers in the zoning. I trust that your height permission principle will not automatically strip me of my right to a fair hearing when such conflicts come into the planning department and council for consideration.
Okay. Well, I've given you some extra time there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. You do have some questions, Councillor Affleck.
Thank you, Mr. Thanks for coming. Thanks for actually helping me understand your neighborhood a bit better, because I noticed, as you heard, that it seemed like there was some opportunity to create more height there. As it says, you can go higher than that if need be, but staff had said that there are view corridors in that area, it appears, and I don't know exactly what they are, but perhaps could protect you. I'm not sure.
I think they do.
Right.
Thank you. I appreciate that sentiment.
You did say, though, if there is an opportunity to create significant density in your neighborhood in order to subsidize potential housing in another neighborhood or subsidize housing in your neighborhood, so like we're seeing around the city, a combination of market rental with another half of the building being social housing, cover the cost of it, and it's 50 stories or whatever. Are you comfortable with that because it's social housing?
Yeah, if I could have my slide back, please. So I lived in Chicago for many years. I tutored in Cabrini Green, and I lived in a 60-40 market rental social housing building. It was 35 stories, and I never had any issues. I think it's a great model. And especially a model that I think Chicago was glad to have followed there, as opposed to making the whole city like Cabrini Green. As you can see in this zoning, this picture of Thornton Park, the column that starts with E and goes all the way down fronts the industrial lands that are currently in development. And if everything underneath there got maxed out to, I don't care, 100 stories, you're not blocking anyone's sun, because no one's living in the Providence healthcare area. Like, of course, you're going to have to think of that for future. But my only point, and really it's such a self-centered one, and I feel horrible with all of the issues that have been brought today to raise it, but it really is an issue for my specific unit that if you wall over the Cobalt and that 4-floor walk-up artist space, I won't have any sunlight in my unit, and that's an issue for me. And I think that my zoning specifically was written for sunlight in living rooms and for intermittent towers with views in between the towers, which I already have through the village that's there.
I would imagine that would come through some sort of public hearing, and you'd probably have a chance to argue
yes.
that.
But and I also see policy being made in these guidelines that will come flying in my face if I don't say something. So
well, there's shadow rules and all sorts of things. But anyways,
yeah.
You might want to talk to staff about those things. But thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Affleck. And those are your questions, Ms. Wolf.